So we'll open the floor to some questions. I just have a question for Tim. When can we expect the module out, and is it going to be freely available for people?
Sure. So as we had alluded to, we're hoping to validate the module. So with Dr. Bona this year, we actually did a short pilot study with the residents at Queen's. That was the last photo from Ashley and my slides. And it looks like there's some promising initial results, but the N is quite low. And so we're looking to we'll reintegrate the feedback that we received after the residents went through the module. Then we're chatting about doing more of like a multi-center trial with residents to prove with more statistical power that it does make a difference, just to have just one other feather in the hat of it being useful. And at that point, I think we'll put it online and make it as part of the core residency curriculum, maybe at Toric or some other forum. So hopefully in the next, I would say, year to year and a half, we hope to have it up and running.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Steve Kraft from Toronto. I really appreciate it. I think this is a tremendous idea to have this symposium. I commend all of you for that. But as in many of these symposia that I've heard on ergonomics, there's one component that is rarely discussed by the vendors and so on, and that is a segment of our population called kids. Half of my practice is children, squirming, big, little, tilting, left, right, up, down, equipment not at all friendly to kids, but we have to deal with that. And add that to the fact that an EMR is coming into our institution, so not only we're not going to be talking to the parents and typing, we're going to be moving up and down, left and right, trying to follow a squirmy kid around the room. What are you going to tell us, and how are you going to optimize things for the pediatric practice? And you had the COC, which is the orthoptists. I'm surprised. I saw one picture of a kid, and I saw somebody leaning over, ergonomically off balance, and that's a big problem. We've got pediatric practitioners. If you have a large number of kids in your practice, none of these things really apply in terms of the equipment because it's not geared to kids. Just wonder how you're going to solve that, and how are the modules going to be taken into account for a big population that we have to serve. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve, for that great question. I also practice and have a segment of my population in pediatrics, but and we did see in our responses that there is a definite complaint. There are definite complaints about for the pediatric physicians in terms of positioning, and actually just examining children is difficult. And even though the equipment could be lighter, like the handheld, one of the pictures was a handheld slit lamp, even though it's the lightest one available, it's still very difficult to get it down and right before the child moves. So those are just inherent problems, unfortunately, in looking after children. It's harder. The truth is it's harder to examine children. And I think that it would be impossible for us to think that we will be able to change all the equipment, but I'm saying that we're trying to just create awareness, be aware of our positioning, and maybe if we include the orthoptists and basically other pediatric practitioners, we can lobby for their support too. They did talk about it also in many of our survey results about even the lenses and moving all those small equipment. It does seems to affect all of them.
Thanks for your comment there. We have incorporated in the module a number of slides directed towards pediatric, like loose lens, retinoscopy, and using prisms. So there are some things that are just inherently not ergonomically sound positions to be in, but there's always a way to do things more or less ergonomically. So Sarah and Leslie, two of the orthoptists in Kingston, they are very aware of their positioning. They always have the child move as close as possible to them to minimize how much side leaning they're doing. So there's invariably going to be just inherent issues with things like pediatrics and the elderly who have poor flexibility. But the point is that there's always a way to do things more ergonomically sound, regardless of changing equipment. So being aware of that is important.
I just wanted to add, and I'm looking over towards George, you're probably going to be incorporating this anyways, but one of the things that George taught me was just about leg and hip posture to get yourself in the best possible position when you're forced to adopt these awkward positions. And as soon as he showed me that and I started doing it, I just noticed an instantaneous benefit from that. So George, that's going to be coming up in a few minutes. That'll be incorporated. Great. So that's great.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think one thing that was brought up that was really useful is to kind of diversify your day. Having, 4 2-year-olds in a row is probably difficult. Throwing in a 12, 13-year-old once in a while to kind of get you back so you're not repeating the same posture and over again, I think is useful. And what Timothy said is absolutely true. Loose lenses and loose prisms haven't changed ever, right? There's got to be a better way to do that, right? And I think the problem is we're just not engaging the right people as a unit. And I think the pediatricians across Canada can do that as a unit because there's enough of you guys. And the problem is definitely there, yeah.
Kashif.
I think this is a great forum. Thank you very much, Lauren, for your leadership on this. One comment I would make is these awkward positions in pediatrics or some retinal exams, we should not, I would submit to you, not think of this as a work-related thing. And just the same way we train for, marathons and swimming, we should be able to train for what we do at work. And that means, having a personal trainer or someone who's knowledgeable about certain exercises that we can do that can reinforce some of the muscle groups that need to be supported. So like, for example, our upper traps are usually overactive, and so there are things we can do away from the work situation that perhaps may put us at less of a risk when we are put in these awkward positions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that you can minimize the amount of risk that you have at work, but you can't completely negate it. And so regular exercise and strength training is considerably important on top of that.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
So I just wondered, in the survey that was done, when it asked about EMRs, that was halfway through the survey, and that sort of stopped me because I don't have EMR, so I didn't complete that. But I was wondering another thing, and I think the point that was just brought up, the survey would have been useful too to ask people how many hours a week they get of exercise. Because certainly in our population, with the increasing of obesity and a whole lot of other issues, if there's no exercise going along, I'm sure ergonomics is going to be very important. If your body can't do anything, when we're working with kids, like Dr. Kraft said, you're basically all over the floor. So you're having to train to do everything. And basically that requires some other kind of physical exercise other than just sitting properly and turning correctly. Because with the kid, there's no correct place.
We wanted to actually ask, it's a great question. We wanted to talk about general fitness, like what is your BMI, because this is actually relevant, right? If you're fitter, just like you said, if you cross train and if you run for a marathon, you're actually going to be less likely to have a work-related injury just because you're fitter. So I think that there's some things, because it was a survey, we couldn't ask so many questions, and so perhaps in the next
Made her
survey.
cut down.
Yeah, that's true. Dr. Pellin made me. It was too long of a survey initially.
So
perhaps we'll have another.
So actually, we have that in our survey, and it's unfortunate it was such a long survey, but luckily we got you at the right time during summer, and you guys were very happy to complete it at the cottage. So BMI we have, height we have, obviously from the BMI, we have number of days of exercise a week, number of days that you're taking off work. It's just, I think it's a lot of information, and sifting through it as a group is more important. So what you're going to find is it's going to be published very soon, hopefully in the Canadian Journal of Ophthalmology. And so when you're looking at it, your feedback's more important. So whenever you see any of these published, make sure to reply back, because I think that's the way this discussion is going to start.
We need the dialogue so that we can move forward.
Colin?
First of all, thanks for this really important work. I think it's tremendous, and this information is really important. At the risk of setting up the next talk with another question, one of the things I think we are all recognizing is that changing these things is hard. It's established equipment, it's been around for a long time, and it's hard to change all of it. You can do certain things well, but one of the changes that is easier to make, I'd be interested in your comments. I was amplifying the problems that I was having in the front seat, so to speak, doing everything up in front by sitting down and doing 1 to 3 hours of desk work a day as well. And with a change to a standing desk, I took all of that away as far as I could tell. It's now a much more neutral posture, and it doesn't amplify the problems that I'd been having in other areas. So interested in whether you have any comments about that.
Well, I guess my comment is that I think it's really helpful to have advice from someone who's knowledgeable in these areas. And so I have a computer monitor and a computer screen that are at variable height adjusted positions relative to the slit lamp to deal with those kinds of issues. And I got that because fortunately my regional health authority does have some ergonomic consultants that I was able to turn to. But I don't know, it's worth checking with your regional health authorities, but if you don't have access to that still, I think it behooves you to seek out assistance, and that's why on the handout, one of the things that I have listed is the website for the Association of Canadian Ergonomists, so that you can get a consultant in your area to come and analyze how you're doing and get feedback about what you're doing to make positive changes. Go ahead.
I'd like to commend the panel and this whole discussion because I think it's an important topic. And in my whole career, I always wondered about why we deal with so many awkward positions. In practicing retina or in general, working the slit lamp has to be one of the most awkward instruments ever designed for the patient or the doctor. And when it was designed, I don't know, 50, 100 years ago, there was a reason. That's the best they could do. Why can't we redesign the whole slit lamp concept without taking away the biomicroscopy part of it? I mean, free lenses on to a handheld lens, but why can't we, for example, perhaps come up with a slit lamp using modern technology, lightweight, that's head mounted, and it moves with you? Or why can't we do pediatric retinal exams with a camera rather than by trying to do indirect on a kid who's moving around, or worse yet, a slit lamp exam? I mean, these kinds of technologies should be possible today, but I don't think anyone's looking at it.
So that leads me to, again, back to the handout that I have. I just want to make you aware of one modification that does exist for slit lamps. If you look, there's a picture of me at the American Academy, and Hagstreit does have an angled neck addition for the slit lamp, which does change the position that your neck and back is in. And I've found, I've installed. The problem is that it's really expensive for a piece of metal, but it really makes a difference for your comfort. So I'd recommend people trying it. I was kind of disappointed. I was hoping I was going to see it on the trade floor here, and they don't have it on display here, even though I told them we were going to be talking about this and they should be highlighting it, and they didn't, which is frustrating. Anyways, we have to move on to the next part.